I'm going to call this luncheon talk a book report between the covers. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. The book I'm about to focus on, though, is kind of started as a proof of concept. As JP noted, I do a lot of work with CIOs. I think it's important to note that we haven't really talked too much so far about local CIOs, both at the state and local government level. And when you look at it, in the United States alone, we have 80,000 small units of government, some being larger than others. So I want to share with you a couple of things that I think you might find of interest. These are a couple of books that I have my name to. And the textbook that I use in my course and used across the country is probably obsolete, even though it's two and a half years old. I mean, that's how fast things are moving. The one to the right on CIO leadership will be the third edition, and that'll come out in January. The middle one is what I want to spend a little bit more time talking about, which is AI, a primer for state and local government. The subtitle being Everything You Need to Know Since Yesterday. So you know right now that I'm not taking myself too seriously. When this book was published, my dean was very excited, and his first question was, where was this published? And when I told him it was published by a small nonprofit, he was less than excited. As we know in academia, it's where you publish, not how you publish. And yet, I got one of the greatest, warmest, nicest rejection letters ever from Taylor Francis Rutledge. And the person I work with, who I have a number of works with, said, I would love to publish this, but I can't because you acknowledge that you have co-authors in this book, ChatGPT, Google Gemini. And I said, yes. They said, we can't do it. We cannot use art that is generated by AI in our book. So I think our publishing enterprise is a little bit behind. I think they're suddenly getting the message. But it was rejected by 2 publishers. So the fun thing here, this is not working. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So here, I want to do a book cover. And so my first question is, draw me a picture of an octopus sitting on top of masses of data, both structured and unstructured. And this is what I got. Now, this to me was not really what I had in mind, but it was interesting in the sense it almost looked like something in Las Vegas, somebody with poker chips. If you look closely, every one of those little objects has something to do with social media. And so the reason why an octopus, every time we hear or see anything illustrated with AI, what do we see? A blue, ghostly, humanoid type thing, almost ghostly, ghastly. And I wanted to be different. I like animals. And the octopus is one of the smartest creatures on the planet. And it has all these sensors. It can sense things, its surroundings, and it's very adaptable. So I figured this is a good use of something that could be totally unique because in the world of copyright, you cannot copyright art, but you certainly can take credit for being the originator of it. So if I could have the next slide, please. There we are. So I tried again, and the upper left was another rendition. That wasn't terrible. That looked like Phantom of the Opera to me. And then finally, I said a little less color and maybe a little less tech. And that is the bottom right. And that became the cover of the book. And so that covered the bases as far as I'm concerned. What made this book unique to me was the proof of concept. I have a number of books with my name to it, but this one is different. I acknowledge that I had AI assistance in this. So this has a lot to say about perhaps a future of publishing and how we go about our works. I found it to be enormously helpful. And this is, we're talking about only 18 months ago. It came out in April 2024. But I look at it, I utilize 6 different AI agents, and I list them. Today I would probably use a couple more. Some others have come into favor, perhaps more than others. All the AI art is generated, not just the cover, but on the inside there are 26 illustrations, all using AI. And then I had it formatted by AI. I had it edited twice. And I am happy to say that humans found 2 mistakes after it was published. Now, why am I happy? Because it just shows that we have to be ever careful. And they found the word copyright was used in the wrong context. There are 2 copyrights, one with an R and one with a W. And AI did not catch that. So this is a concern that I have about getting lulled into all these wonderful results and then just going with it because it looks right and it seems and feels right. Also, the octopus has 8 limbs, and it so happens the book has 8 chapters. I would love to take credit for that. That was an absolute mistake. It just happened. So in my work, I have headed the Public Technology Institute for some 21 years. I just recently stepped down from that position. And I wanted to share with you, since the theme of this overall conference, there are 3 words: CIO, innovation, and AI. And so I want to wrap it together in the local government context very quickly. The first I want to share with you is this from a report that we did last year when we asked, how prepared is your organization when it comes to AI tools and technologies? And look at this, 46% said they were somewhat prepared, and 38% said not prepared at all. That number has not changed much to this day. And every one of the CIOs I talk to are saying that they need more training for themselves, let alone their staff. Another chart that I found interesting is there a single individual that is in charge of any kind of AI adoption? Because there's all this talk about possibly creating a new position, Chief AI Officer. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And the answer was 63% said no, 11% said yes, but that was somebody taking on that responsibility. Now, we in our association, the nonprofit that I headed for all these years, believe that somebody should be in charge, not command and control type charge, but being a facilitator, somebody who can share information across all the lines, because this topic is changing so rapidly. When I continue on this journey, I look at my counterpart organization. If anyone is interested in the U.S.'s state CIOs, NASCIO is a great source of ungated, excellent research and publications, the National Association of State CIOs. I work very closely with them. What's interesting about this report that came out in 2025 is for the last 5 years, they've been asking a question among these 12 skill sets. What are the most important for today's CIO leader to navigate all this stuff in technology? And you see change leader, communicator, strategist, relationship manager. Guess where technologist is? It's ranked number 10. So this is a real shift in this country at least, and I suspect elsewhere. It is the people skills, it is the managerial skills that are being looked for than ever before. When the CIO was first created in the public sector, it was all about technology. In fact, the difference between a chief technology officer and a chief information officer was much of a blur. In many cases, it still is. But in this case, the technology is something they believe you can acquire or you can hire. But when it comes to who's in charge, you've got to have somebody with a much broader perspective and strong on all sorts of people skills. If you look at the top priorities in terms of what keeps CIOs at the state level up at night, the 2 biggest things are cybersecurity and AI. And we've heard repeatedly these things go hand in hand. In the book, the CIO Primer, I identified 14 areas where AI can be incredibly helpful when it comes to cybersecurity. And then after writing it, I had a nightmare. I thought, I'm giving a very one-sided view because there are also some countervailing threats to that. And luckily, I hadn't gone to press yet, so I also show there are some real dangers, one of them being over-reliance on AI. So when it comes to all these different things, we've talked all about enterprise-type solutions in the private and public sector. When it comes to state governments, and I suspect with local governments as well, this number is very revealing. 82% have admitted, through surveys at least, that they're using AI now. And this is before the organizations have even created the policies that enable them to do it in a more systematic way. This is a little scary. We heard the word shadow AI. I believe it's a real problem. I've written about that 2 years ago. It is even a greater problem today because government is moving so slow. they're still looking at guardrails. I personally believe we need guide rails. There's a difference. Guardrails is what not to do. Guide rails acknowledges that, but it should also tell people what you should be doing and can be doing, because this is a very, very powerful set of tools. So, moving on. One of the things that I've noticed is this leadership thing that keeps reoccurring as a theme. How long do you think is the average tenure of a state CIO? With all the problems that we're facing in all our organizations, the answer may surprise you. The answer is 18 to 24 months, because it's considered at the state level a political appointment. And this makes for a real dilemma in terms of getting things done in a systematic way. Usually it's a deputy that carries on the responsibilities. The second thing that I see that's causing tremendous angst in state and local government is the rise of the chiefs. And this is something that we're seeing across the board with all these different competing chiefs. The real question is, who reports to who? And now the latest one is the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer. And my sense is, this comes back to the CIO. We have an academy here that's part of the co-sponsor. The CIO is the Chief Information Officer. To me, if that person is truly involved with information, then the A part of it, artificial intelligence, could easily and should be wrapped into that, at least at the state and local government. And most of my peers totally agree with me. But you have all these different aspects, and every one of these relates some form or fashion to data. So one of the things that I helped create almost a decade ago is a certified CIO program for local governments primarily. We are now in our 11th year, and we're graduating 100 students every year. This is a partnership that my nonprofit has with Rutgers School of Continuing Education. I have privileges there to this day, and it's a very exciting program. It started with 10 students in 2010. So I think at the local level, there's a lot of exciting things that are happening. So I want to leave you with a couple of things. In all our research, there are 6 concerns regarding AI that the CIOs have kind of expressed concern over. Of course, you can't get to good AI without good data. So the issues are data quality, data and AI governance, the fear of AI's rising cost. You know, for all consumers, they're getting a lot of this for free. CIOs are not getting it for free. There is a real cost. They're worried about AI accountability, a term that is becoming more and more important. How can we be assured of the outputs when we can't explain what's going on in the black box? Vendor overpromise, because we're totally reliant on the vendor community. We certainly want to trust, but in the end, who is blamed when something goes wrong? And again, over-reliance on AI. The 6 common things, not necessarily AI related: cybersecurity and risk management, retaining and attracting AI talent. This is a very tough one because many of these people can make so much more on the outside in the private sector. Still worrying about legacy modernization, inadequate funding, CIO relevance and effectiveness with all the chiefs. It's hard to rise amongst the crowd. And then professional development scarcity, the lack of training monies and the lack of institutions. Up to this point, colleges say, we got a degree for you, and that's the wrong answer. Colleges need to be far more flexible and agile by saying, we have a certificate program for you. We have a certification for you, because these people do not have time for a full-blown degree. So with that, I just want to share with you some things that I don't have time to share with you today, but in the last 2 days, I've had 2 articles published. I write for the technical press. I'm going to leave you with a landing page where you can go for more information. But just last night, when I was having dinner, my 2026 outlook for AI came out. I encourage you to look at it. That's in GovTech. And then on Monday, I came up with this novel thought, I think. I didn't have an octopus here. I didn't choose the art. But AI as a thought processor. Think about that, how we've moved from a word processor to a thought processor, and I go into a whole thing about that. So I don't think we have time for questions, but I do want to leave you with this, that I do have a website where all this information is, the books, the blogs, and I think you'll find 20 blogs that will satisfy your curiosity, you just go to sharkbites.net, and that is my short luncheon presentation between the covers of the books.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Well, wonderful talk, and congratulations on all you're doing. I'm going to ask a question out of curiosity, then I think we have time for one more. So with your octopus book, as I'll call it, what's your guidance on the use of AI to the students in your classes?
I was one of the early adapters. One of the earlier faculty meetings 2 years ago was, this is the end of academia. It was gloom and doom. I leaned into it immediately. And in this semester, I scheduled a 15-minute talk with my students, and it turned out to be an hour and a half, and it was well spent. Students are using it. So faculty can argue all they want, this is good, this is bad, it's going to destroy minds. And that's a great thing to talk about for a lot of good reasons. But we have to accept the fact students are using it. It is here. And so I lean into it. I have a policy within my syllabi saying this is the appropriate use. These are the 4 principles. If you're using it, I want to know how you're using it. I want to see the prompts. And they feel relieved because it's like they knew they were using it. They wanted to know how they could be honest in using it. And we've had a very positive relationship ever since. The second thing I will say, I have lessened the dependence on the written word. They have to earn 5% of their grade every single week. I have assignments. They have to verbalize what they're saying and what they're thinking, and with their lid down. That is the only thing. I mean, it's going to require more work of faculty to ascertain that, but we cannot rely on the written word because AI is so good and it's undetectable.
Thank you, Alan. And one CIO question. Does anyone have a CIO question they'd like to ask? Well, I'll ask one. So local governments, some are very, very large, like Fairfax County, and many are very, very small with limited budgets and IT expertise. So what is your counsel or guidance to these smaller local governments in regard to technology in general, but more specifically AI?
This reminds me, I was asked to write a piece 2 years ago as a challenge to all local governments. That is, and I did it tongue-in-cheek, why local governments should outsource all IT. And that got a lot of buzz. And you can find it there. And the answer, I had people from Loudoun County, a lot of counties saying, I agree with you. Even the larger counties, the smaller counties can no longer, I think, adequately defend their units with the cybersecurity requirements that are needed today. This is a great opportunity for the private sector to step forward, or for shared services. They need to get out of the business of protecting the networks as if it's their own. It's nice, but we can't do it. And so I think AI is the same thing. It is beyond the capacity of all these smaller jurisdictions. I'm less worried about Fairfax County, more worried about the city of Fairfax and some of the smaller jurisdictions across the country. They can't do it. In many cases, the IT director is an assistant city manager. That's their responsibility. It's an unrealistic expectation, and there's so much at stake in terms of citizen trust.
Thank you, Alan. Fantastic. And please, wonderful resource, sharkbites.net. So thank you, Alan.
Thanks.